Hi everyone, Armoured Pants here, and I have another review for you. This is the British Line Tier 10 TD, the FV4005 or 4005. As always, we're going to have a complete review for you. This is a subscriber request video. I'm very happy to do it for you guys. We're going to look at all aspects of the tank. We're going to look at the tech spec, gameplay, you name it. We're going to have a look at this. We're going to have a look at some of the historic aspects of this tank as well, because it did exist, albeit only 3 were made. But actually it sort of represents a significant turning point in tank development in between the 50s and 60s. When this tank was developed between 1950 and 1957. Significant changes were made, and we'll go through those when we look at the tech spec. And as always, for the tech spec, we will use blitzhanger.com. Now, in terms of the configuration, for provisions, I would use T, improved fuel, and putting in T. A lot of T, but it is a British tank. That's going to max out the performance for you. I would run calibrated shell, supercharge, and refined gun for the gun system, and we'll discuss why we'll run calibrated shells rather than gun rammer. The gun itself gives you, it's a 123mm gun. It gives you 460 damage points, 390 for APCR and 550 with HESH. And the burst damage then is 1380 to 1650, and you get that every 18.5 seconds running calibrated shells. You get 294mm of PEM with AP. Your Pramo gives you 389, and HESH gives you 72mm. As I said, reload is 18.5 seconds, and you get 3-second reload per shell. So basically you can unload the whole magazine in 6 seconds. Muzzle velocity is 1300 meters per second for AP and HESH. It goes up to 1650 meters per second for APCR. Now, the gun system gives HESH, and HESH is why we want to run calibrated shells, because it gets that penetration on the HESH up, and that giving you your maximum rolls. HESH is a unique shell type, so therefore I thought it would be a good idea to take a time out and have a mini tutorial on HESH shells. So take it away, Boffins.
HESH high explosive squash head, Heat high explosive anti-tank. These 2 rounds first saw use in World War II. For these ammo types, distance or kinetic energy are not a factor once they reach their target. HESH is a slow speed round that uses concussive explosive energy to damage the interior of the target. HESH contains a thin casing with a plastic explosive that flattens against the target before exploding. Once the round is partially squashed, the plastic explosive ignites. The concussive energy transfers through, and pieces of the armor or equipment inside become the destructive elements. Heat contains an inverted cone-shaped charge with a metallic liner. Once the round reaches the target, it detonates, creating a molten metal hypersonic jet. This explosively formed penetrator requires standoff distance to form its maximum penetrating power. Research has shown the more angled the cone is, the more concentrated the jet becomes, increasing its force and penetration distance. Advances in technology have mitigated these effects, such as explosive reactive armor and composite armor with ceramic plates and other materials. Spaced or slat armor also reduces the effects due to causing premature detonation.
So I hope you found that useful. Now, with HESH shells, and obviously the gun index, the gun handling index is obviously going to be very important, right? And the gun handling index is 15.2, which is not great. It's about what you'd expect in a tier 8 TD, so it's okay, but not great at tier 10. But its mobility index is fantastic. It has a 5.7 mobility index, which basically means it's like a medium tank. As you'd expect, then, it is fast as 40 kilometers per hour, 18 reverse. The 18 reverse, by the way, is really excellent for any tank type, let alone ATD. And actually, this is one of the reasons it has such a high mobility index. And it has an excellent power to weight ratio too. Now, in terms of consumables, I would run 2 repair kits. We'd explain why when we look at the armor. And then you have 2 options that I would choose between the Reticle calibration and the shell reload boost, and we'll discuss both of those when we look at tactics, but just keep in mind those 2 options. In terms of concealment, when you run Camo Net, which you have to do for this tank, a tank with a 310 view meter range is going to spot you up at 12 meters if you're not moving, 243 meters if you're moving, 256 if you're firing but still, 274 if you're firing and moving. It's important to bear this in mind for a few reasons. Firstly, because of its mobility index, you may decide to move this tank around the map a lot. Therefore, you may fire when you're moving, so you need to know what your camo numbers are if you decide to do that. But the second reason is this armor, because it has none, right? Well, yes and no. It's kind of like Schrodinger's armor. It doesn't have armor, but it does have armor. What do we mean by that? Well, on the hull of the tank, it has this spaced armor, which you're looking at here, right? And this is fantastic, because up there, a tank like this with no armor, when you're up at tier 10, you're going to get HE and HESH spammed at you, right? And that is going to be absorbed by this spaced armor, which you see on the sides and the back. By the way, interestingly, the spaced armor at the back is not actually armor. It's actually a kind of crane jaw, which was designed to lock the tank into the ground at the back to help with muzzle recoil, because they were considering putting the 183 gun on this. So it's a very, very interesting historical quirk of this tank, that this would actually dig into the ground at the back. When the tank would fire, that would then help with the recoil and absorb some of that recoil. So a fascinating piece of engineering. In Blitz, of course, it's going to help you absorb HESH and HE. So this is great. But looking at the profile of the tank here, we see that it doesn't have any armor on the turret. And normally in a tank, the turret is much smaller than the hull. But in this tank, you can see that the turret is bigger in terms of its height than the hull. So you actually have, and that's also very elongated, which makes this tank really fucking ugly, by the way. It is really one of the ugliest tanks. It also looks like a tank you draw when you're 5 years old, you know, in your copybook. And I think this is something somebody designed on a Friday afternoon. We wanted to go home for the weekend or get to the pub for a beer. It actually looks like kind of like in a fucking accordion on tracks or something like that. But you know, it means that you are going to get HE and heat and HESH spammed at your turret, and that's a problem for this tank, right? Because you're gonna get spammed, and it's kind of a tequila tank, right? 2 shots and you're dead, because up there, you know, we've only got 1800 hit points, and you're very easily 2-shotted by something, you know. So you need to be very, very careful. So this is sort of one of the drawbacks of this tank. You're going to have HE and heat spammed and HESH spammed at you. You're a massive target, and although you have that spaced armor on the hull and at the back, the turret is so big it's easy to hit, especially for experienced players, the players that you're going to see up at tier 10. Now, in terms of tactics, I said you have this Reticle calibration, or you have the shell reload boost. If you're going to fight from distance and you don't intend to use the mobility of this tank but use it as a traditional TD, then the Reticle calibration is better because it reduces dispersion, etc. It makes it far more accurate from distance. If you believe that you're going to get into a brawl situation in this tank, then the shell boost system is important. Now, before we look at the gameplay, I want to discuss this with you in a bit of detail. The shell boost system doesn't boost the magazine reload time. That remains the same at 18.5 seconds if you're running calibrated shells. What it does is it reduces the reload time between the shells once the magazine is reloaded, and it reduces down from 3 to just over 2 seconds. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you can unload your magazine, your entire burst damage, in about 4.4 seconds rather than 6 seconds. So, by the way, in case you're wondering, well, hold on a second, it's 3 shells. Yeah, but you don't count 3 times, you only count twice, because you fire the shell, reload, fire, reload. So you need 2 reloads, right? So it's 4.4 seconds or 6 seconds. When you consider that you can unload 1500 to 1700 damage in this tank in a magazine with 1 magazine, and you can do that in 4.4 seconds if you use the shell boost. That's incredible. That is incredible firepower. I would go so far, guys, as to say that that is game-changing firepower, because particularly in the middle to end of a game, if there are, you know, a few tanks left that are not on full hit points but still have a lot of hit points, you know, this tank can take them out then in anything from 4.4 to 6 seconds. It's incredible. You're looking here at the damage that I can do. I just pumped in the magazine into that object. You saw there that he went from pretty decent situation to being just, you know, a few hit points left. And with better RNG, I might even have cleared him off completely. And that's why I mean this is game changing. If this tank is left on its own in a Kolobanov situation, if it ends up in 3 1v1 situations, the chances are this tank is going to win. If it can get 18 seconds in between engagements of the enemy, this tank is going to win. You saw there a bounce, by the way. They are few and far between, guys. You know, that is basically any bounce you get in this tank are pure luck. So just be aware of that. It's not your standard type of gameplay. But this tank is really, really effective. Its burst damage is phenomenal. I could have even done more damage and cleared off the grill if I went to Hesh there, but I wasn't sure what else was going to come around the corner, so that's why I kept it at AP, so I had the option of putting it around into a more heavily armored target. But if you rotate into Hesh, and again, for example, I should have done, I normally would fire Hesh here, but again, I wasn't sure what was going to come around the corner in front of me. That's why I left it at AP. Now I do over 6k damage in this game. If I had fired Hesh on those 2 occasions I mentioned to you, I could easily have done over 7k of damage in this tank. And we know on the video that we spoke about doing damage, you know, we talked about choosing your tank types to do damage. This is one of those. This is one of these tanks that can do massive amounts of damage. If you were, so if you're going to get into a brawl, then I would consider, if you think you're going to get into a brawl, if that's your play style, then the shell boost system is the consumable you should use. If you are going to fight from distance and you're a more traditional TD type player, then the Reticle Calibration is a much better consumable to use because it reduces that dispersion over distance. And as we know, dispersion is your likelihood of missing over distance, and it's at 100 meters. So if you're fighting 200 to 250 meters, it increases exponentially. So therefore I would consider that. You need to run 2 repair kits, by the way, guys, because you are going to get tracked in this tank a lot, and because you've no armor, you definitely don't want to get perma-tracked in this thing. It can be game over. This lack of armor and the fact that you've got big guns out there really means you can get a significant amount of damage inflicted on you very quickly. So just have a recap. This is an ugly but effective tank, much better than the Death Star, by the way, at tier 10. Its gun index is okay, but its mobility index is superb. So this tank can get around the map. It's agile, has excellent gun system, and the burst damage, as I said, can be a game changer, absolute game changer. Load the consumables to suit your game style, so whether you want to use the Reticle option or the shell boost, it depends on how you think you're going to play this. Both options are good, depends on your play style. Your HE magnet, as I said, so run 2 repair kits, definitely very important for you. And you will then, I think, have a good time playing this tank. It's a very, very effective TD, and very much one I enjoyed playing. So cheers, Mush. I hope you found that useful. I hope you found it enjoyable. And now I guess all remains for me to say is, as always, pants off.
That's all, folks.